Got some good dinners going on this week. Holla. How many collas I got? It's alright. Hey, John. Hey, Internet. Oh, the foibles of youth. I honestly have to give you credit, John. We both talked a big game when we were young about being romantics, but you were the one who actually followed through with all that. To often disastrous consequences, but hey, like you said, it got you where you are now, and where you are now is pretty great. So, do you think that part of the reason why you were such a hopeless romantic back in the day was because of art, like books and movies and plays? I'm going to say yes, because it's my segue. So I recently finished two books, Paper Towns by John Green and Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. I don't want to talk about these books. Well, okay, I do want to talk about them because they're both fantastic, but I'd much rather not spoil anything and have you read them. All of you. So instead, I'm going to talk about how they made me feel and how books like this are necessary, now more than ever. So let's do it! Holla! As I'm sure I've said a few times before, in America we are constantly drowning in a sea of information. The internet does not discriminate, and hopefully will continue to not discriminate, thanks FCC, more on that in another video. It will send you any information you ask for. It is amazing that we have so much information at our fingertips, but the more you take in, the less you retain. And it becomes a daily intake and purge where few things stick with you longer than a few weeks or even a few days. I think this thirst for information is behind the popularity of non-fiction books too, memoirs and the like. It is a story, but it's also information. It really happened. And I also think this sort of information is easily digestible. How sad, how amazing, how inspiring. Put it on the shelf, and move on. Then there are the books that are fictional stories. I read Ready Player One recently, which was a good story, but that's what it was. It was a story. It was a plot. I enjoyed it. I'll put it on the shelf, and I'll move on. Mystery books are like this, romance novels. They're valuable for this. They transport us outside of ourselves, but they don't change us. Station 11, and then Paper Towns directly after it, changed me. For at least the few weeks after I read them, and hopefully far longer than that, they're stories, and they're good ones, but they're more than that. It's funny, I always used to scoff at bookstores having a literature section. Isn't it all literature? Doesn't anything with a spine belong in the grand category of literature? No. No, it does not. I don't want to come off as a snob here. I'm really not trying to be. I think there's a good reason for everything, for trashy romance novels, to philosophical treatises, to BuzzFeed, to the New York Times, to YouTube videos, to literature. I just want to say I think there's a reason for these definitions. I want to say that I read Station 11 and I loved the shit out of it. I wanted to go back to its world over and over again. And while reading about the characters and the world, I began to think about the characters in my own life. I began to think of my own world and how I exist in it. And this is what's valuable about literature with a capital L. Information doesn't ask you to look at yourself, it asks you to comprehend. But information is trying to establish facts, and those are easy for us to refute. Don't like what an article says about the war on terror or the state of American politics? Look around for 2 seconds and you'll find information on the completely opposite opinion. You can argue and debate to your heart's content regardless of what is true. Stories ask you to listen, but that memoir you just read, did you not like what it had to say? Easy then. The author, they're a terrible person, or they're just different, or their life is interesting but it's not yours. However, fictional stories with characters that resonate, plots that engage and challenge, there's nothing to argue with there. You want to argue with Arthur in Station 11 because he's kind of a dick? Cool, he is. Go for it. But he's a fictional character. He's a figment of the author's imagination, and yours too. So you know what you're doing? You're arguing with yourself. You're talking to yourself. You're thinking about what you would do, what you would say. You're thinking about what's important to you. I think it's much more difficult to dismiss good fiction because while it's a reflection of the author, it's also a reflection of you. There are no facts in fiction. That's why they call it fiction. There's nothing to refute. For me, it can affect me much more deeply than information. It asks me to look inwards at myself. I think that's what good art does. Good plays, good books, good movies, and yes, even good video games. Everything wants your attention nowadays. Wants your eyes and ears and your likes and comments. It's vital sometimes to read something that cuts through all that noise and makes you think about what you're doing and where you are. I'm going to buy a hardback copy of Station 11 and put it on my bookshelf, always facing outwards. Both it and Paper Towns, I hope they always remind me how there's a difference between existing and living, and how our cracks, our imperfections, are what make us interesting. Okay, did that make any sense? I felt it all very viscerally, so it's not really right or wrong, it's just my gut. That was my intestines right there. That's right, you know. So, I'm serious about wanting you to read these books, and let's have a conversation about them. Paper Towns is a little more light reading, very, very good. Station 11 is heavy and amazing. I've written short reviews on Goodreads, which I'll link below, and I, of course, have a Twitter account where we can discuss them as well. I'm out of books right now, so I'd love to hear about any books you've read that have changed you as a person and made you sit up and take notice. As always, thanks for watching. Until next week, read, because survival is insufficient. Peace out.